Hello, everybody. Today, in this amazing, interesting, super interesting Type 1 Diabetic Test interview, we have with us Cory Bird, and he has an amazing story that I just can't wait to share with you guys. I think it's mind blowing. And to start, Cory, just start us off. When were you diagnosed with diabetes?
It was February, about 5 years ago. I can't remember the exact date of that.
I'm in the same boat. I know it was like I was 14 years ago for me, but I don't know the exact date. I have to ask my mom for that, right? How
Yeah, I
old
know I'm 5 years in.
how old were you back then?
I believe I was 14.
14?
Yes.
Okay, so you're 19 now?
20. Because my birthday's in March, so I was just coming up on my birthday
Oh,
when I got diagnosed.
I see. I see. And when you first got diagnosed, what were the doctors telling you to do as far as managing diabetes goes?
Eat what you want and take insulin.
Yep, same here. Did you follow that out front, or what'd you do?
Actually, interesting thing with that, it was literally in the hospital. I got taken in the next day after I got my blood work done, and they took me in and I just ate the meal there that night. I went. My grandma has type 2 diabetes. I went to her house, ate a salad the night before, and I went in. And then the very next day, my mom was doing some research and found Dr. Bernstein, and she was actually telling me to try to limit my carbs as much as I could with what they were giving us there. So for breakfast they came in with a little bowl of Rice Krispies and a couple other things and some sausage and stuff like that. And so I said no to the cereal and went straight for the protein right off the bat, pretty much. So got pretty lucky there.
Wow, the day following your diagnosis, you start low carb.
Yeah, pretty much.
How the
I couldn't
doctors
believe
like it when you said no to the Rice Krispies?
I kind of got a funny look. They're like, "You don't want food, all right?" Well, and I'm not sure if it's right, but I believe in the hospital, when you're in there, they want you to be eating you're getting plenty of energy so your body can heal and such. So I think that's kind of just a policy there.
Yeah, and they don't see fat as an energy source, it seems like, so carbs all the way to the top, right?
Yeah, just that immediate energy there.
So they gave you a funny look when your mom and you decided to make this switch pretty fast. Did
Yeah.
they was there any struggle with that as far as the doctors go, or did they just accept it?
Well, they can't force me to eat anything, so it was kind of just I said no to this and I want this, and it just kind of went like that.
Well, I'm glad they're at least working with you there. I've heard I've heard horror stories where it's the exact opposite, and people ask for diabetic meals at hospitals, and they'll give them like bananas and toast, all this other
Oh
terrible
yeah,
stuff.
bananas were the one of the things I was sad about not eating when we decided to go this low carb route.
I understand. I'm the same way with oranges. They're my favorite fruit. I miss
Oh,
them.
I love
I miss them.
oranges.
Anyways,
But bread was my big thing. My mom's a fantastic baker, and she loved making bread, and I miss that a lot. Probably most of anything is bread.
I bet she misses baking it for you as well. That's how my mom is.
Oh yeah.
She used to make me these wonderful cookie squares or these clear chocolate chip cookie brownies. It's amazing. But those days are behind me, unfortunately for mom. Fortunately for me.
Yeah.
Anyways, back to your story. Let's not get too off track here. So
Yeah.
you decided to go low carb the next day after diagnosis. That is incredibly
Yes.
lucky. Were you able to stick to it? So I know, especially being 14, seems like it'd be hard to stick to. So were you able to stick to it?
For the most part, we still being in the hospital, we were eating higher carb than what we do now. But I stick to no more than 50 carbs a day as generally my rule. I don't try to get up to that point, but if where I'm going out with some friends or something, or going out to eat somewhere, uh, I just make sure I'm not going over a certain amount.
I understand. And you were able to keep up with that this whole time for the whole last 5 years.
Yes.
That's fantastic. Good inspiration for the parents wondering if their teenagers can take it or not. A lot of times
Yeah,
people,
and
yeah, go on.
Yeah, I'm definitely not the most strict with the low carb, but I definitely don't eat certain things for just because of the reason of not wanting to get all those carbs in.
What? Fantastic. So, what I really want to get into here is the results of you taking this step so early on after your diagnosis. You were full on type one when you went when, right?
Yes, my A1C I believe was 12.7 or 12.4, somewhere in that range.
Wow,
Uh, I
that's
remember,
crazy.
yeah, the doctor was saying I was almost off of her chart.
How high was your blood sugar when you came in?
Uh, After I came in, I believe I was coming off of a 12-hour fast, and I was up in the 300s, close to four, maybe.
After a fast?
Yes.
Wow. Yeah, that was crazy. So you're knee deep in that diabetes. But
Oh, yeah, yeah, yeah.
once you started, were you able to get control of it?
Yeah, so while we were in the hospital and my mom was doing her research on type 1 diabetes, found that anywhere your blood sugar goes over 120 is when it starts to do damage to your body. So that was more of our immediate goal right off of diagnosis, is to keep it below that and kind of as low as possible.
Below
Without,
120?
yes. She read optimal range was between 80 and 120. So that was our range and our goal.
And were you able to keep on that?
Oh yeah, for the most part, I had a couple highs. My highest after diagnosis and up until this point has been, I think it was 290.
Really? That's it?
Yeah, because
Wow.
it was about a month or two after diagnosis, and for some reason I really wanted pizza, and my I ate like I think two slices of pizza, and then my blood sugar shot up, and we haven't done that again.
So the 290 happened when you cheated. Wasn't even from a low
Yes.
carb thing.
Yeah, we were doing good on low carb for that first little while, and I asked my mom, and she's like, "Yeah, sure, we can get pizza." And it was I think Little Caesar's deep dish. It was the old square one, so
Yeah, that's
I
the
really
thing.
wanted that.
That's the thing about cheating when you go low carb. When you do it, oh, it fights back for sure.
Yeah. Oh yeah, because you don't realize how much insulin you actually really need to take when you're only taking maybe a unit at a time or two
Yeah,
units or what have it.
exactly. But anyways, so aside from the pizza, aside from that one time where you got the 290, everything else you were like, how often were you able to keep it within 70 to 120?
Uh, Most every time I checked it, I would have one every occasionally I'd get like a 124 or something like that, and I'd give myself an extra unit or something, or because this is when I was still on the Novolog pins. I'm on the Omnipod now, so I can bolus in smaller increments. But at the time, I would just give myself one unit, and that brings me down about 40.
But so you were very rarely high and very rarely low, or did you get low a lot?
In the beginning, highs and lows were a bit more common, but throughout the years, we've kind of got it to where I know how much I need a bolus for certain things if I have to, and they've gotten less and less common as time has went on.
So you're pretty good at keeping that in that range. And do you test a lot?
No, not anymore. Originally, I did. I was testing probably around 4 to 6 times a day. When I wake up and before each meal and that kind of sort of thing. There.
But how often do you test now?
Uh, Very rarely.
Like once a day, once a
Maybe
week,
once or twice,
once
once
a
or twice a week,
month?
maybe. Yeah, once or twice a week, maybe. Sometimes I'll go 2 weeks without testing. So
Really? That
yes,
that seems pretty dangerous. And you know you're able to keep within 80 to 120 doing that?
yes,
Every time you've checked, whether how long it's been, you end up not high or not low.
yeah. Generally only test now is when I feel high or I feel low.
And you have a good feeling for that?
Yes, actually, a good example for this is just this last Friday. I was at work. I woke up, went straight to work without eating anything. So uh, I went into work and I'm just doing my thing, and I start feeling just a little shaky. I'm like, oh, my blood sugar may be going low, and so I just keep working for a little bit, and I'm like, yeah, I probably better go test. So I go over and grab my bag and I test my blood sugar, and it came up as 79.
So that's not even low to me. That's like just barely, that's on the cusp. You know what I mean?
Yeah. Yeah, and that's where it was for me. When I start to get shaky, that just tells me my blood sugar's dropping below 80, and starting to go low.
Do
And
you
so
man
I just went and checked.
do you
What
manage
was that?
that with glucose tabs or what?
Actually, from watching, I believe it was your video on microdosing, my mom actually just gave me some Smarties,
Oh yeah, yeah, yeah. Those work too.
and so I have those now.
They're great. It's a very
Yeah,
convenient way to go about it,
yeah, it is because
and
it
they're
doesn't
cheaper
melt,
too.
and it. Oh yeah, and very good information on that. I really enjoyed that video.
Thanks. I'm glad you liked it. So I want to get this straight because this is what I find really incredible. Um, you barely ever test, which is for any doctor under the sun, even me, honestly, even me would say it's a big no-no. You gotta test all the time, right?
Yeah, and I
And
definitely wouldn't recommend it.
yeah, yeah. But in your case, it's interesting to get this story out there. But so in your case, you barely ever test. You just go by feeling, and despite that, you never see highs, you never see lows, and you've been able to keep it within range, probably better than even some non-diabetics consistently. That right?
Yes, and I do occasionally go like little high, like, and there's times where I feel like I'm high and I'll test it and it'll be like 91 or something like that, but I have a really good feeling for when I go high and low, like when I actually start knowing when I'm feeling high, because it's a very specific feeling for me. Like I'll go testing, it'll be like 121 or 124 or something like that, and just very soon after it gets outside that range or up to it, I can feel it pretty well.
That's crazy. I mean, for me, I test all the time. Like, I literally post pictures most days, giving like an hour by hour trend of my blood sugar. So I literally test every hour on the hour. And even doing that, doing the best as I can, I still end up, sometimes hitting 140, 150, and, dropping down a little low every now and then too. I still get those highs and lows. Not as bad as normal diabetics for sure, but you seem to be doing way better than I am despite barely ever testing. Do you think the fact that you started low carb so early has anything to do with that?
Oh, I definitely think that's part of it. I think that's an enormous part of it is just the fact that we got it within this range instead of some diabetics will go couple of years being up in the 200s and then finally getting it back in check, and they're not able to feel those highs and lows as well as I can, being that we got on it so early, which I'm very fortunate for.
I don't think it's even just about feeling it. It's also just about what? How can I put this? I feel like your body's probably producing a little bit of insulin still,
Yes, it is. My pancreas still has a very small amount of function to it,
and that's 5
which
years
definitely
later,
helps.
which is unheard of.
Yes.
Unheard of. Like honeymoon typically lasts maybe a few months tops for most people. But for you, it's still going and going in a sustainable way to where your management is not only more tightly controlled than most, but also way easier than most.
Yeah, I'd say so.
That's a blessing, honestly.
Oh
Um,
yes.
Given that you've never had to really deal with the complications of type one, the ups and the downs, the terrible things that can happen if you don't take care of it later on, what would you say your motivation is for staying low carb? Did you just think it was the right way to go, or
Well, I think
what?
that my well, I've always thought in more of long terms. I haven't been one of those people who thinks really day by day, but thinking of my long term health, I know what my goals were in life, and I know that with diabetes and the complications that can come along with it, if it's uncontrolled, I wouldn't be able to reach those points in my life that I'd want to. And plus, especially getting what later in life when I start getting up to my 40s and such like that, well, I plan on having a family and all, and I want to be there fully intact for my family.
Damn right. I'm in the same boat as you there, brother. Absolutely. And do you think I assume your mom explained it all to you pretty quickly, all the possible complications and everything. Do you think her giving you the rundown, was she honest about it when you started out? Or did she sort of tiptoe around it?
Oh, oh no, me and my mother are very the same, and we don't really sugarcoat things very much. We give it to you straightforward, bad or good, which is fortunate for some people and not so much for others.
So you think just giving it to like it was a really good thing?
Oh, yeah. Well, I think it's more kind of one of those scare tactics type of things where, uh, you get all the facts about it and you see all that can happen in the suffering you could go through if you don't keep control of it. That it's kind of like, yeah, I got to get my stuff in order real quick.
Exactly. I mean, the reason I bring this up is I see a lot of times doctors will sugarcoat things for the kids that are diagnosed and say, "Oh, it's okay, just see whatever you want, it's all fine, you'll be fine," without really telling them the truth about how the gravity of the situation. And I think that's really unfortunate because if you don't lay to them straight and tell them this is what you got to do to manage this, then they end up suffering in the long run. They end up, you know, like you said, not living long enough to support a family like you're trying to do here. I think it's very unfortunate.
Yeah, and I think the severity of the health complications that you can run into with uncontrolled blood sugars is downplayed a lot.
It really is, and not just even the severity, but how avoidable it is. I mean, to me, honestly, I rather you're an extreme case from what most people can see because very few people are to have control so easily. But you really should be the norm. You know, it really should
Yeah,
be. Doctors should tell people that they need to eat low carb from diagnosis. They should start from diagnosis, and that way you have the best chance to control this disease as easy as possible.
yeah, and I would agree there. But and this is coming from people who have lived the experience where doctors learn a lot in school and kind of feel go by the book. I could be wrong about this, of course, but and also with the cost of insulin nowadays, I feel it's more in the interest of pharmaceutical companies to tell people to eat more carbohydrates so they use more insulin and such like that. But that may just be a conspiracy. I don't know.
Well, it is true. I mean, I used to work at diabetes camp myself. Eli Lilly has Novo Nordisk. They all have a huge hand in the American Diabetes Association and how they run things and the material they hand out and what they teach and just basically how they run all sorts of different activities and guidelines for diabetes. So I wouldn't be that's not that's I wouldn't be surprised at that at all. In fact, I would be surprised if they weren't influencing the ADA to push insulin and push carbs as much as they can for their budget. But
Yeah,
yeah,
and it's also one of those things where if that's what they've been taught and they've went through school and they've learned that this is how you control your diabetes, and I think it's more of a lack of knowledge maybe than anything else.
how has your doctor felt about you embracing this approach and how well you've been doing on it?
We've had multiple doctors take a look at my diabetes over the years, and most have not been receptive to it. But these last few doctors that we've went and talked to, seeing how long I've had it and seeing what my A1C is and the results from what we've been doing have been a little bit more open-minded about it, I would say.
Yeah.
Before they didn't really listen to my mom and her 2 cents worth on the whole situation there. But recently, they've actually been asking questions and kind of showing an interest in the plan that we've chosen and the route we're going. So I see that as a positive there.
That's good. I mean, just being the example, man, is going to be turning heads for sure. Especially someone who barely tests at all, being able to manage it this well. That is rare as a unicorn, in my opinion. Even in the low carb community, that's pretty rare. Um, but what you mentioned your A1C. What is your A1C right now?
My last A1C was taken a couple weeks ago, and it was a 5.0.
5.0. Very nice. That's literally non-diabetic levels for anyone wondering. Non-diabetic
Yeah,
levels for this guy with type 1
yeah,
diabetes.
and I believe there was a couple of times where we went in and we got my A1C tested, and they actually wondered if I had diabetes, which I think is a definite plus. And I'd much rather see my A1C get down to like a 4.8 or something, and that's just gonna have to be me getting a little more strict with myself. But
Yeah, I
uh,
understand. How
but
strict
yeah,
are
the
you
highest,
right now?
like I said before, about 50, no more than 50 carbs a day, my absolute max.
What do you typically eat in a day?
Uh, It depends on what I make sometimes, or what my mother makes. Sometimes I'll make like what we call lazy lasagna. It's basically just lasagna with spinach in place of the lasagna noodles, which in my opinion I like more than actual lasagna. And I make stuff like chicken and broccoli casserole, just basically anything with cheese in it.
It's basically meat, veggies, cheese, stuff like that.
Yes.
All right.
Very little fruits, very little breads. And if I go out to a restaurant or something with some family, I may have like a roll or something, something that's about 15 carbs, something that's not gonna totally wreck my blood sugar in an hour.
Really? And that doesn't make you spike?
Uh, Generally, when I know I'm going to eat bread, like if we're going out to like a steakhouse or something, and I know I'm going to eat a roll, I'll like as we're sitting down, I'll just go ahead and bolus that 15 for that 15 carbohydrates or 20 carbohydrates for that before, and then when I eat it, it'll my insulin should be kicking in about the time I do.
So not only is it the food, but you've also gotten pretty good at the technique side of things, knowing when to bolus, knowing how much to bolus, being able to
Yes,
get that ballpark very well and honed down.
yeah, and that's the thing is I enjoy eating a lot of the same things. I like a couple of things, but like eating a lot of it. So I know how much I need to bolus for everything I eat just based on past experiences and uh, online forums telling you how many carbohydrates are in something and things like that.
So eat more consistently rather than having a bunch of variety.
Yes.
Honestly, I think that's critical. I think it's even a good tip for high carb diabetics, just eating consistently. That makes a huge difference.
Yeah, because when you know that, oh, hey, last time I ate this, I spiked up this much and I need to take this much extra to compensate for it. And I think that helps a lot just making sure that you get enough on board initially to take care of that.
Absolutely. I mean, I love variety. I used to be the kind of guy that would say, variety is the spice of life. But that comes at a cost, especially for us diabetics, because, I mean, every meal becomes an experiment at that point that you have nothing in the past to back it up with if every meal is different all the time. But if you ate the same thing, not all the time, but you can change it up sometimes. But if you eat consistently, you're going to know just from the past what works, even if it's
Yeah.
not what everyone else does, because we're all individuals in the end. Now, do you think that you would have been able to attain this kind of control if you didn't go low carb?
No, not at all. Because back before we got diagnosed, we actually thought we were eating pretty healthy. We were pretty ignorant when it came to our diets, and me and my entire family were all not in very good health at that point in time. But we thought chicken noodle soup, and we liked potatoes with ours, so we had chicken noodle soup and potatoes, and we thought that was a pretty good meal there. Obviously with some bread. All of our meals just there's going to be bread there.
Carbs everywhere, right?
And thinking about it now, that scoop of mashed potatoes was probably 45, 50 carbs. With the noodles, that was probably another 30, 40 there, and then you have your 20, 30-gram slice of bread. So, just in that meal, you're eating over 100 carbs.
That's just not something you think about. Even if you're a health nut, all you're worried about is the fat, the cholesterol, the calories. Carbs don't. A lot of people that aren't diabetic, when I tell them about carbs, so I'm like, "Oh, this is too many carbs." They just look at me sideways. They don't even know what carbs are. Like the lack
Yeah,
of
and
knowledge is
that's
astounding.
that's even it, because even before that, we were trying to do the diet thing, do the 2,000 calorie a day diet. We went on walks and we did stuff like that. But whenever I would look at the nutrition facts, I'm like, oh, there's these carb things here. I wonder what those are. Must be like that sodium thing there. It's not important.
Honestly, I'm of the opinion that using that the wording itself is meant to be um, deceiving, because fat is just called fat, and that's already a word we use all the time. Fat, as in you're bloated, you're fat. That's already there. Protein is a nice short word; people can understand it. And then you have carbohydrate. This like weird sciencey word that is just too long for
Yeah.
anyone to understand.
It's like the Latin word for animals or for certain things. People hear it, but the meaning behind it is just completely gone for everyone else just because of how it's said.
It's like if everyone called water like oxygen dihydroxide or whatever.
Yeah, yeah, I know what you're saying.
Just call it the chemical
Yeah,
compound of what it really is. That's so funny to me.
yeah, and it's just stuff like that where you don't really think about it, like you were saying, until you actually get into the low carb and you actually start paying attention to what the stuff does to your body.
Hmm. Exactly. And people just don't know. And hopefully, by setting the example like you are with the doctors, more people will really understand the effects it has. Sometimes for people it can be fine, but for others, like us, it's not so fine. It's not fine at all. And hopefully, as time goes on, more people will understand that. But
Yeah,
one thing I wanted to get into there. You mentioned you were eating healthy before. Um, I find that so interesting. So you all were eating what you thought was a healthy diet, but you weren't doing so well health wise, you and your family.
no, not at all. Because we always knew that soda bad for you because it has all that sugar in it. Because sugar is always also one of the demons that they just put out there, like, oh, sugar is bad. It makes you gain all this weight, and so we always knew that was bad. But stuff like bread, we thought bread was good for you. Stuff like peaches and pears and apples and bananas and all that other stuff. Fruits and vegetables are so good for you. And but when you look at how much in fruits, not the sugar in fruits, not bad for you because it's natural kind of
Yeah,
stuff there. I've heard
natural.
that one a lot. It all does the same thing essentially.
What's really funny and that something I actually didn't even put two and two together for 14 years with diabetes. For 14 years, I didn't put two and two together that carbohydrates are carbohydrates. Sugar is a carbohydrate. Carbohydrates are just chains of sugar molecules. That's all they are. And when that was finally like revealed to me, it just blew my mind. I'm like, oh, duh. If I should avoid sugar, I should avoid these too. They're also
Yeah.
sugar. It's so funny.
And then everybody's always was always in also in on that added sugar.
Yeah, added. I think, just like I was saying before with the carbohydrates, I think it's honestly meant to be deceiving because added sugar is just another way to cop out. It's another way to say no added sugar in something that has tons of sugar in it. Give someone a fruit,
Yeah.
you say it's no added sugar, but there's 20 grams of sugar in it. It's just not
Yeah,
added.
that
It's
does make
marketing.
sense there.
It's marketing. That's all it really is. But what can we do except for educate people? Anyways,
Big part of that.
so what, other than low carb, obviously, what is something you wish you would have known from the start that you know today about managing this disease?
That is a good question. I never thought about that. I honestly don't know because when my mom has done so much research and I've read into it, and I really don't see anything that I know now that I wish I would have known 4 years ago.
Or how about this? What is one thing you wish other diabetics knew at diagnosis that you were able to find out so quickly?
The advantages of the low carb, how much better I felt after coming down from that high blood sugar and keeping in this range. Because before when I was diagnosed, every time I went high, I just didn't feel very good. It was a horrible feeling just being so high with my blood sugar. And I wish more diabetics knew that if they were able to keep it down at this level and eat this way, that it would make them feel better. And even my mother, who's not a diabetic, eating this way says she has more energy than she's had in years, and it just feels better overall. And our family doesn't get sick as much. And
Is your whole family eating this way?
most of us, I think one of them that moved out is trying, but not very successfully.
Mm.
But like before we even started eating this way, my dad was pre-diabetic, and now is back to a normal A1C and is doing much better.
Just curious, what was his A1C before and what is it now?
I could not tell you. I'd have to go ask my mother for that one.
Well, we'll assume it was better. It was bad before and better now. We'll just assume that.
Yeah, I'm gonna say it was probably up in the sixes at minimum,
Mm.
up in the sixes, maybe sevens.
That's full on diabetes if it hits 7.
Yeah, so it was probably up in the six range, I would guess.
Understood. Understood. And did he, did he have a lot of weight that he lost too, or
Oh yeah, he lost a lot of weight after we went on this diet.
how much?
He's I think he was like around in the 240s maybe. Don't quote me on that one, but he's now down to just about my weight around I think he's like 180, 185 maybe.
That's amazing. That's a huge change.
Oh yeah. And like I said before, we were all big. I was my just like a year before diagnosis was probably about, 5'6" maybe and about 200 pounds.
How much are you now?
I am 5'11" and I am 185 pounds.
So you're a lot shorter, but you're also a lot tubbier now. You're taller because you've grown, obviously, since you were 14.
Yeah.
I'd hope.
I'm glad.
But you still lost weight even then.
Yes.
It's
And
great.
yeah, and that's the great thing about the way we've been eating is I've not only been able to take that weight off, but keep on it. Keep that weight off.
Exactly, exactly. Was it hard to make the transition to low carb for you and the family?
Yeah, it was initially. There was a little bit of resistance from my two older brothers because my oldest brother especially because he's out with friends all the time. It's pizza and hot pockets.
Is he the one that moved out?
Yeah, my two oldest brothers have moved out,
Hmm.
and actually my oldest brother's wife is kind of keeping him in check a little more than he would keep himself.
Well, that's good. I'm glad someone's looking after him at least. Now he's out of the
Oh
cuckoo's
yeah,
nest.
yeah, and he calls our low carb food fake food.
Like, oh, do you make a lot of low carb breads and treats and stuff like that?
Yes, and he calls that like the ice cream she makes. He calls fake ice cream. So that's
Man,
pretty entertaining.
man, I'm too lazy to make my ice cream. I'll just go get some Rebel or something. They got brands out in Kroger's now, so like I don't even need to try and just go to the store and get some ice cream. It's more expensive, but it's worth it. So,
Yeah, but the chocolate chip cappuccino.
ooh, you need to share this recipe with me. Maybe if you share it with me, I'll link it in the description. I know everyone's
All
gonna be
right.
wondering now. I'd be down.
Yeah, like, and I have a lot of meals that I personally love. Varieties of different Mexican stuff. Like I said, lasagna, the chicken and broccoli that I made. Just all this stuff that I just really enjoy eating and making.
How do you do the Mexican stuff? Because that's like Mexican food's like 90% carbs.
Yeah, it's basically like Mexican stuff, and you put it in a pan with cheese on top, and just forget about the tortilla.
Yeah, yeah, just no rice, no tortilla, no beans, everything else, bam, bam, bam. It's like fajitas,
Yeah.
essentially.
Oh, fajitas are my favorite,
Oh yeah,
favorite
oh yeah.
ever, and that was such a hard point, not knowing I can't eat tortillas. She has come up with a couple different options to make that transition a bit easier. But yeah, on the topic of things I wish people would know is that even going out to eat, there are great options for low carb. Like one of my favorite places to go is Qdoba, Mexican restaurant. But I get there both ask for no rice, no beans, double chicken, and they uh just do their three cheese queso and some cheese on that and some guacamole and call it done.
The Mexican the I won't call that Mexican like the Tex-Mex places like that where you can just go in and get a burrito or a bowl. Those are the easiest in my opinion. I have a Chipotle right near me and a local place called Half
Yeah,
Life Burritos that you can just do exactly that. And it's so easy. It's great.
yeah. Qdoba is just like Chipotle from what
Yeah,
I've heard. I've never been in a Chipotle.
they're exactly the same, but Qdoba's a little bit cheaper. It has a little bit more
Uh,
options, I think. Um, but I mean, there's even other restaurants that actually have keto offerings now, like Blaze Pizza, which is kind of like Qdoba but for pizza, where you pick the crust, you pick the toppings, they make it in 90 seconds. They actually
yeah,
have a keto crust now, or they can also make it crustless. So you can even get pizza low carb from a restaurant these days. Now, not all
yeah.
restaurants, but
I'd
there
be
is
wary
one.
of that because there's a brewery near where I live, and they have a quote unquote low carb pizza, and they get the crust from another company, but when you look on the ingredients, it has potato starch in it, I think.
Ah, I see.
And
Well,
so
low carb, right?
yeah, it's like few carbs less or less than what a normal crust would be,
That's a
but
good
none of the
point.
enjoyment of Yeah, and that's what would tell a lot of people, just look at the ingredients, because even if the ingredients say zero carbohydrates, there can still be sweeteners in there that will affect your blood sugar.
Yeah. I always say, when it comes to the processed keto foods, honestly, I typically don't recommend it. I'm more of a whole foods kind of approach kind of guy. And I'll have them as the occasional treat, but you don't want to make them a staple, at least in my case, because a lot of times they have a lot of fiber in them, a lot of protein in them, especially the Quest stuff, and it can just make you spike like mad. At least in my
Yeah,
case. And I mean, even if it is keto ingredients, always gotta check that label because you never know. Like, there's so many of those frozen cauliflower pizzas out nowadays that are made with rice starch, so they're gluten free, but they're not low carb by any means.
yeah, and that's also another thing, is that getting those fats and proteins in there will keep your blood sugar from spiking so quickly. And so that's where, when I go to some place, like, if, like, say one time I want a burger or something, I will go there and I'll either ask for a triple or something, or a double, or get two and smash them together, where I getting more of those fats and proteins in, so those carbs don't absorb so quickly, and so that keeps my blood sugar from spiking way up to 160 and then coming back down.
Exactly, and along with that, if you're more heavy in the protein like I am, eating more fat really helps level out that protein rise a lot. Do you bolus for
Yes.
protein?
Yes, small amounts. I actually kind of learned about that one recently, so I'm still kind of working on how much I need to give myself to compensate for that. So,
It's an
uh,
experiment in the making, right? That's how it is with
yeah,
diabetes. What kind of insulin do you use?
Novolog.
All
I am
right,
strictly just Novolog.
on the Omnipod, and how much do you typically take in a day?
For bolus, or for does that
Both,
include
both.
basal?
Well, basal
Uh,
and bolus.
Basal and bolus. I think my basal is set around 14.75 units, and by the end of the day, I may be at like 16 or 17, somewhere in there. Because I generally only bolus maybe about 5-6 units in a day at most.
So you still, despite making insulin, you still have to take quite a bit of insulin,
Yeah,
given
I
what
take
you
one
eat.
unit for 15 carbs.
Not bad. That's actually pretty insulin sensitive. That's more sensitive than I am, at least. That's for sure.
What do
So,
you take for
well,
15 unit?
for 15 carbs, I take at least 2 units probably. Um,
Okay.
I eat super low carb though, like usually about zero per day. So you're more used to them than I
Yeah,
am.
yeah, and that's another thing. It's like some days I will eat zero carbs, and some days, like when I'm out and about and such like that, I may stop in and have something that has a few carbs in it. It kind of just varies day to day.
Understood. Man, if only people could get that low carb diet diagnosis and have the kind of control you're getting. That's amazing. Be able to achieve that 5.0, get that 80 to 120 range so consistently while also being really easy with it.
Yeah,
How
and that's my thing for not testing, is like where I work. My hands get really dirty, so every time I would wanted to test my blood sugar, I'd have to stop and I'd have to go to the wash station and wash up, then go back, and it just takes a lot of time out of my day working, and doesn't make me look very good. So that's a large part of it. And then it was from a course of doing that and noticing that I'm not checking my blood sugar, and everything's still staying in range, where I kind of just started declining in how much I would check it, and kind of got me to where I am now.
keeping it simple, keeping it easy. It's commendable, honestly. And man, you're lucky to having it getting started on the right path so early. Seems to have been what made it possible for you to control it so well without having to test so much. So again, I wouldn't say that if you're like me, you've had diabetes for a long time, you're just now starting this approach. Probably shouldn't just test once or twice a week. You're not going to be in the same level of control as this guy, even if you test a lot. But you know what? Going low carb is still going to be an amazing option for you. And if you're just diagnosed, or if your kid's just diagnosed, this can be, that can be you, man. That can be you. And I envy it, honestly. I envy your story, man. Really do.
Yeah, and then again, I've had this for just about 5 years now, so I've had it for a while, and I know how my blood sugar reacts to certain things, and so that definitely just makes it very easy. And
Oh,
I definitely wouldn't recommend not testing your blood sugar. I've just found that for me, whether I check it or not, my A1Cs turn out the same. So
that's amazing. It's hard to believe when when your mother first told me that. I couldn't believe it. I was like, this kid's lying. There's no way.
yeah, you're real skeptical. Like, hey, yeah, I don't. Are you sure about that? I got to turn on the heater here. It's real pretty chilly down here.
Well, because the thing is, a lot of times kids won't manage the blood sugars very well. Like this was the case for me. We won't tell how our blood sugars are doing. We won't tell our parents, "Oh, my blood sugar was this." When my mom would ask, my blood sugar was 200. I would say it was 100 because I didn't want to worry her. You know what I mean? And so
Yeah,
that was why I was skeptical at first because in my own life I used to downplay my blood sugars because I had no control over them. But it generally seems like you do, and that's amazing.
yeah, and I kind of did some of that stuff to an extent. Like if I tested my blood sugar and it was 124, my mentality was like, just a little bit outside my range. I'll tell her it's 118, so she still knows that my blood sugar went high. I just wasn't out of range because that's like getting a demerit on, at school or something. It's just kind of like, yeah, let's just downplay this just a little bit.
That is the most milquetoast white lie in diabetes I've ever heard.
Yeah,
But it's great that you don't really have to you don't really have to lie about your blood sugars or anything like a lot of kids do. You don't have to run away from that. You don't have to feel sad about it because you have it under control. And with such an easy go attitude as well, I find that astounding, honestly.
yeah. I've always been more of a laid back type of person, and I think that's kind of helped a little bit, not freaking out every time my blood sugar goes high and then over bolusing and then going low and type of thing. I feel like that's kind of helped.
Keeping off that roller coaster makes it a lot easier because if you don't have to correct, then you don't risk going low. And you don't risk going low, you don't have to correct for that. And it's so easy for people to fall off the wagon because they're so busy correcting and just going up and down, back and forth. If you can avoid that cycle like you've been able to, it's so much easier. The easiest days for me have been the ones where I don't spike and I don't drop, where I don't have to do
Yeah.
correction. That is the easiest time. That things are just gravy then, and
Oh
hopefully,
yeah.
hopefully more people will discover low carb upon diagnosis and do exactly the right thing at the start, and hopefully be living it easy like you are.
Yeah, and I also think that a major part of that was me getting my Omnipod, having this pod here where I can. I believe they said I could take up to zero point zero 0.05 units of insulin at a time. So a very low amount. Well, like 1/20th, I believe, is what that is. Where when you go to eat a snack and if it was like 10 carbs or something, you tested your blood sugar, you're at 81. It's 10 carbs. Well, I take 1 unit for every 15. So I'd either have to eat 5 more carbs to make up for that unit. If I was just, bolusing with a Novolog pen, I'd have to take a full unit. So it's either eat 5 more carbs or, risk going low type of thing where having this bolus pretty exactly for what I'm.
So one of the great benefits about the Omnipod for you is that just how precise you can make it, and how controlled it can be, and how convenient it is to do all that.
Yeah, because if I wanted to bolus for 23 carbs, it would give me like 1.35 units. Somewhere in there, I could give myself that precise amount instead of either going for possibly going low or possibly going high.
Yeah, even with the smallest syringes that I use, the 3/10 cc ones, even then you're eyeballing it pretty hard just to hit 1.5 or 0.5, let alone
Yeah.
1.35.
Yeah, and also it gives you insulin in micro doses, so it absorbs faster.
So you say
It,
definitely the low carb, but also the technology really helped you in managing this.
yes,
That's great.
yes,
That's
definitely.
fantastic. Well, congratulations to you, man. I believe it's about time we wrap this up. I believe we've gotten a good story here. One last question I'll ask you is there anything you'd like to tell any diabetics watching this right now, wondering maybe they're starting out, maybe they're doing it for a while, wondering what to do next and how to manage it better? What would you say to those diabetics?
It's possible. It's not going to be fun first off. You definitely can do it, and it's honestly the best thing you can do to stay in good health and avoid uh you know stuff like losing toes and having really bad infections and stuff like that, and just avoid more severe complications down the road.
Fantastic. Well, I believe we'll end it at that. Thank you so much, Cory, for sharing your story with us today. I think it's an amazing tale about how easy you were able to manage this and how well you're able to manage it. It's inspiration for diabetics everywhere. But we'll leave it at that. Cory, thank you again so much for your time. This is how Cory tamed his type 1.